Hello, this is Get Carter, and this video will be regarding setting up rust deoxidizers and different ways to set them up. I had a comment on one of the videos to show the automation wire for the rust deoxidizer setup I had, but I looked at it and realized it probably could be done a bit better, especially if you're not actually going into it. So I've set up a couple of different things with regards to how I would do it differently, I suppose. It's still roughly the same idea, but depending on how many rust deoxidizers you're going to use might depend on how you set it up. So this is similar to the setup I've got in my playthrough, except I haven't worried about gas pressures. So all this has is you got the 4 rust deoxidizers. You got the sweeper that will pick up the salt and the rust to automatically feed it into the deoxidizers, and then you've just got an atmo sensor up here. I'll go through the atmo sensor down there. Atmo sensor up here to basically only pump once it gets above a certain pressure, and then also an atmo sensor down here for make it these pump only go at a certain amount of pressure, and also a gas element pipe that says there has to be chlorine in this level to pump, so it won't pump if there's oxygen. So automation, simple enough. It's just an AND gate. Both of those go into the pump and it doesn't get to activate. You could probably put this up to 1,000, wouldn't matter. And obviously you can pump the chlorine out anywhere. You shouldn't be pumping out anything except chlorine with these two, so you shouldn't need to filter it. You can, in effect, if you basically vacuum it out to make sure there's no polluted oxygen or hydrogen or anything like that in it, you can then start it off in a vacuum and you'll only have the oxygen and the chlorine. And with this pressure settings, you shouldn't have an issue with oxygen getting into the pump, because it shouldn't actually go on unless there's a decent amount of chlorine down here providing a decent amount of pressure. And obviously with 4 rust deoxidizers, you are going to produce more than 2,000 grams of oxygen, but only just. So you'll get, that's what, 570 for about 2,280 grams. So these 4 will produce more than is required, or more than these 4 pumps can pump out, but that doesn't really matter. It just means I'll be a little bit idle once in a while, because it'll hit max pressure. But there's no good ratio for pumps to oxygen with this one, because it's 570 per second. So if you go to this layer, so when it's running, I'll go through the desalinators in a sec. Are they going to empty that? I don't know. But basically, the way this thing will run is the chlorine will never go above into this area, because you can probably drop the pressures here. I've just set it at 1,500 and I'll put that up to 1,000 just to be sure. But you could probably experiment and run it at a lot lower pressures. But obviously if there's a positive pressure up here for the oxygen, it should theoretically push the chlorine should basically go straight down. It won't have any room or inclination to go up. So you could drop these pumps down one to save a little bit of space. You can also get rid of this. I just did it as a ladder because I had dupes in there before. But obviously if you're just sealing it off and you're never going to have to open it again, you could get rid of that. You could drop this down by 1, so you could make it 1 shorter and 1 block less wide. But in effect, so what will happen is with the desalinators, this should empty out, and this should be in range to pick that up. And we've got a storage bin over here to dump it. So now what I wasn't sure enough was, come on, where are you? So salt drops there. That picks up salt, and it should put it in here. And obviously, when the salt gets used, it'll transfer it from storage bin to conveyor loader. Once there's room in the conveyor loader. And that basically is all you need. The Atmos sensors are solely there to make sure there's enough pressure initially to separate the chlorine and oxygen. And the sensors the sensor's just a backup in case something goes wonky with your oxygen, but it shouldn't really matter. But it's not a lot of resources, so it's just something to have there as an extra step to make sure oxygen doesn't get into your chlorine. Now with the, what do we got, desalinators, so 3 of these will do enough salt for 4 rust deoxidizers, slightly more because it's 350 I believe. Oh yeah, don't do that. Yeah, well, it's more, this is using salt water, because usually there's a salt water geyser on a lot of maps, whereas I don't think there's a brine geyser that I know about. So this is all on the assumption that you're using salt water, so you'll only get 350 grams per second. But if you were using brine, obviously you get 1500 grams per second, which is a lot more salt, and that changes what you would need. Right. Oh, it's using different amounts of salt depending on the thing. And also you'll end up, because it's producing 570 grams of oxygen, you'll actually use slightly less salt as well. But you'd use more salt than 2 could provide. So you'd need 3, but what you can do is set up, I've got another setup here with just 2. You can basically do a smart storage bin, and then just do automation with a NOT gate link there, and basically when that gets full, that'll turn off your desalinators, and you won't have to worry about them running when you don't need the salt. So that's the 4 deoxidizers for gas pumps. You could do, you can do 3 of these, and that, like, you could just lop off that and shift these across, and you'd end up with, what do we got? Yeah, math's too hard. You'd still end up with too much, but you could, you can do 3, but you'd still be going through, what's the salt, 250, 750. If you did 3 pumps, 3 deoxidizers, and 2 desalinators, it'd be pretty close in terms of your salt usage and your how much oxygen you're pumping out. I haven't done the maths, but math's too hard. So that's if you're doing 4, which is a simple enough setup. If you're doing 2, the way I'll probably do it, or would do it, is this way. So basically the same as the other one. All these automations to stop the need to go in and out. So you've got the 2 receptacles for the salt and the rust. You got your pressure and your gas element sensor to try to ensure that the only thing that gets pumped out the bottom is chlorine, which you can make sure of with the pressure, like up the pressure and make sure the element is selecting chlorine. And exactly the same as the other one, you can see that it's got the NOT gate. What probably would have been a better way to do it, now that I look at it, is switch this around. So you put the AND gate over here, and the elemental sensors. Actually, I'll just change that and do that. So the gas element sensor there. You want the Atmos sensor there. And we've got the AND gate. So what you want is both of those green, and you can go over there and set this one to chlorine, and then you want to set that one to pump if it's above. That was on above, wasn't it? Yeah. So what's the pressure here? So this one's got... No, it's got enough pressure. But you haven't got chlorine. Why? This should be pumping, I think. Ah, it's switching so fast. Oh no, it shouldn't. What am I looking at the wrong thing? Yeah, so you can see how the chlorine and oxygen are flicking between each other. So once there's enough pressure build up, this will stay chlorine, although it might take a little bit. But that's alright. It's only 30 grams of chlorine per second for each one, so it's not a lot. It'll take it a little bit. But basically, same thing with this one. And that's probably, I'd say, a better setup because the gas element sensor is closer to the gas pump, so more likely to be accurate regarding what elements actually the pump will pick up. Now the other thing is, so this is identical. You got your loaders for your salt and rust. You got your desalinators. The auto sweeper will basically pick them up and put them in this one. So you'll have, where we go, simple, or you'd put this one. You can leave it at 5, but this one's got to have a lower priority. So when it picks up salt, it puts it in the loader first, and if it can't fit in the loader, it sticks it in the storage bin second, and when the loader becomes empty, it transfers it from the storage bin to the loader because the loader's got higher priority. So that is that one, and that's a fairly compact setup. There's not actually... There's a bit of space here, but there's nothing you can do about that. There's not really any point in trying to block that off because it just gives it more room for the chlorine to build up down here and then the oxygen to build up there. Yeah, so that's still... You can see the chlorine's getting up there. I don't think it pumped anything in. Yeah. So it hasn't pumped, it'll pump in here. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so what we want to do is basically not have this pump until the pressure is... Not cancel deconstruction. Destroy. I thought that pressure setting would be enough, but it's not going to be. Basically needs to be... so that's saying it's permanently in chlorine. We probably don't need that. If we stick this at 1600 chlorine... Stick that at 1600 pressure. What did that pump in? Chlorine. Alright, so that should be better. Or you could even do maybe a higher pressure for the chlorine than the oxygen, so it's always pushing it up. Yeah. So that should work. We'll let that run and we'll see how we go. They've got enough rust, it's got salt. Yeah, they should have enough stuff to keep running for a bit. Now the other thing is, I would say that is the most compact setup. to do. And that one would be rust, basically. And you can set this to rust as well, and that one obviously gets set to salt. Now keep in mind with doing the 3 desalinators with the 4 deoxidizers, that's what, 15 kilograms per second of water that's coming out the other end. So you want to have a use for water. Now the other thing I was thinking about is if you did want to use this as a... Yeah, going to spawn in some dupes and give them something to do. Go dig. That's not dupes. There you go. You go nuts and dig. Are you going to get trapped already? Probably. That's right. They can dig that out. Hey, dig out this bit first, will you? You're sleeping already. Alright. Oh, that's because it's night time. So with this one, I was thinking if you did want to, for some reason, have the oxidizer in the middle of your base as a thoroughfare, what would I do? So I did this one thinking similar to how you'd do a normal electrolyzer. You're basically separating out the different elements. If I did it like this, would any stuff that came in this side or any stuff that came in through this side basically go up there if it was going to, or go down here if it was going to? So I want to try the polluted oxygen and carbon dioxide first, and then I'm going to try the... what do I want? Why have you... Yeah. Yeah, so you should have rust, you should have rust. No, I don't want that. What are we doing? You do 4, you do 4. You do 1, you do 1. So we've got that power. So everything should be powered. These pumps are pumping out oxygen. Are you going to do rust, or are you just going to do salt? You're just going to do salt. They should fill up with salt at some point, and then they'll... Come on, do this one first, will you? There you go. There you go. Alright. So this will start doing its thing. So this is similar to what I had on what I've got on my base still. There's an element sensor up here that basically says if it's not oxygen and the pressure up here is above 900 to pump it out. So if we have people walking back and forth, you'll end up with maybe hydrogen or something up here. And also here as well, it should be... what have I done? This one should be not oxygen as well. But I did not put the NOT gate in. So... Hold on, I'll just fix that up. Hold on, get rid of you. Replace it quickly. We'll put the AND gate there. Then I want to put the element sensor there. And we'll put the ammo sensor there. Yeah. No, not like that. I want the element sensor there, but I'm going to have to do the NOT gate here. There we go. Yeah, so it's... If it's not oxygen, it's... Yeah, if it's not oxygen and the pressure's above 1,000, pump it out. And obviously this is going to pump when it's above 1500, that's going to pump when it's above 900. So if we have a spawn of poor sap in here, EMR, And we get you running from side to side. So theoretically, yeah, so this isn't going to work. I didn't know whether it would or not. Although this is polluted oxygen, so it's a little bit wonky in terms of what it does. You go in there. Just want to see what happens when they're going. So the stuff that sinks to the bottom should be fine, but yeah, the polluted oxygen's not going to work. I didn't think it would. I was just curious whether it would or not. So you couldn't really have it. Couldn't have it as a through fare. You couldn't use it as a sort of little oxygen thing and hope that you could keep the other elements out. The only thing you could probably do if you wanted to is just have it for oxygen production. So it doesn't matter if it's in your base. Yeah, so is that carbon dioxide? Alright, hold on. I'm just thinking. You go away. You go there. This went out to here, and we put the power back. You go back. You could have these just without worrying about the top bit. And you could even have, like, you just have it in your base with the oxygen being dispersed from this, and just have a little catchment here. So why haven't you got... Alright, if we set this to above 600, say. Just seeing if the chlorine will all get captured. I don't think it will. There's chlorine around here because it can't go down. Yeah, so it's just not the easiest to have it open unsealed in your base. You're better off just doing it like that or like that. So it's basically permanently sealed. Who made a mess? Oh, that'd be you. That's right. I gave them mesh tile so they don't have to worry about making a mess. See, she's fine. So, got a little bit stressed for making a mess. Yeah, you're sitting in the... Yeah, I won't do that. Hold on, if that's... it might help if you do that. Now you're going to pump. So if we let it run... That's as fast as it runs. So let it run for a little bit. See, I'm curious if the chlorine will... Why aren't you happy? That. So it might be possible to run this as just the oxygen goes into the base and you have a little chlorine capture underneath. But you probably risk the chlorine escaping because it's not going to sink. Why aren't you... Fine. It's above 1, pump it out. I think it's a mix of the polluted oxygen and the oxygen, meaning that it says that there's not enough pressure because it might have like a tiny bit of polluted oxygen sitting on it. So we pump them out continually. Why are you pipe blocked? Oh, because I did it as if... Fine. Put you out there and that'll give you an alternate way to go. And what we'll do is destroy you. I'm trying to get as much out as I can. You go there, you go there. Oh, who's suffocating? Ah, sorry guys. Have some, not algae. Algae's going to do you any good. Have some oxygen for the second. There you go. You know what? I'll tell you what. Let's give you a bit more oxygen. There you go. You're set. What do I want? Now, is it going to pump better? There we go. That's what I want. So if we get this, what's that, chlorine? Get rid of all the polluted oxygen. Just watching where the chlorine goes and whether it's going to... Yeah, I think, especially with if you've got carbon dioxide down here as well, you'd almost have to set that as 1 and just rely, you basically wouldn't even need that, just basically have, if it's not oxygen, pump. That's fine, make a mess. Oh, you made a mess, I'm sorry. I feel bad. Go sweep it up, it'll give you something to do. That's not really going to work. You've always got the risk that chlorine's basically going to go about your base. It doesn't sink down quickly enough, and carbon dioxide tends to interfere with the gas. So, yeah, it's best to separate it out, I think. So I would go for this one, which I like because it's space efficient, I reckon. And 10 kilograms of water you could probably find a use for if you wanted to. Turn it into polluted water and use it on plants or frost wheat or anything else that any of the plants consume water. Oh, you're not food poisoning. Is that probably because you've been eating off the floor? That Paku's going stale. It doesn't matter, I got frost burgers. Alright, so this one... Chlorine. Yeah, so the chlorine isn't going to go above where it spawns here. And you've got, even if you drop these down, you've got one space above. So for this one's been dropped down one. That shouldn't be an issue. Because there's enough pressure here, basically the chlorine doesn't go up, and it, yes, made a mess. People haven't got toilets. The chlorine just drops straight down. Now, how much? There we go. So this has got, when you up the pressure enough here, especially seeing that the oxygen's always going to be slightly less pressure, or for the most part, so the chlorine's always going to be pushing up into this airflow tile here. It'll be a constant sort of tug of war between these two tiles, which is fine. That'll stop the oxygen getting into the gas pump. So you can pretty much, well, pump the chlorine anywhere you want with the assumption that it's not going to have oxygen sitting in it. And the same sort of thing can happen here, so you just up it to, I don't know, if you did 1600 on chlorine and you did 1500 on oxygen, that should mean that there's always, the chlorine's always pushing up. So you could even, I mean, maybe you could drop it to 14. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Thanks for watching.